Josh does MTG.
Guys, welcome back to the Josh Does MTG. I just wanted to take some time here to talk about how my first video was lacking in all kinds of things. Video quality was crap. It was my first video, and I made the video just for my girlfriend, which in turn turned into this show. But I'm gonna go ahead and get started and redo the video. It's kind of like, hey, you messed up. It's public, but we're gonna redo it. Okay, we're gonna make things better in this video. I actually have time, unlimited time, to explain what I want to. So here's what we're going to do. The first card I wanted her to look at for possibilities in her deck. Now, all these cards are not going in her deck. This is just, possibilities. Some cards I think she should look at. Now, this is Cemetery Reaper. It comes out for 2 black mana and 1 colorless. It has other zombie creatures you control. Get a +1/+1. Obviously that's good. It also has, you pay 2 colorless, 1 black mana, and tap it, exile target creature card from a graveyard. Now it doesn't mean your graveyard, it says a graveyard, which means anybody graveyard. So you put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield. Now that's great because if the other player has a card that you put in the graveyard, it took you a lot of effort to put that into the graveyard, or if they have cards that purposely come back from the graveyard, you can exile it so they can't use it again. So that's something she might want to look into. Or if you're building a zombie deck, maybe that's something you want to look into. Now, the second card on the list is Death Baron. It comes out for 2 black mana and 1 colorless. It says skeleton creatures you control and other zombie creatures you control get +1/+1 and have Death Touch. Now, what makes this good is you can make a zombie and skeleton deck with this card, but she's just focusing on the zombie portion of it. And if you're focusing on the zombie portion, all your zombies would get +1/+1 and have Death Touch, which means you kind of control the field because nobody wants to attack you. Because if you block with any of your zombies you have, if you have zombie tokens or if you just have 1-drop zombies, they don't want to mess with you because you have Death Touch. They can come at you with a 10,000 token, but you block it with that 1/1 Death Touch, and they're done for. That card's done for. It goes in their graveyard, and then you can exile it, which is pretty great. Something she might want to look into. The third card, eventually I'm going to end up stop counting, obviously. Diagraph Colossus comes out for 2 colorless and 1 black mana. See, these are cheap costs so far. Diagraph Colossus enters the battlefield with a 1/1 counter on it for each zombie card in your graveyard. Okay, now let's talk about that. You have a zombie deck, and if you're building a zombie deck and you have zombies that are going to end up in the graveyard because people are going to attack you, you're going to block, the creature's going to die, or you're going to sacrifice zombies for other reasons. Now, he gets a 1/1 for each zombie card in your graveyard. So, for example, you got 10 zombies in your graveyard, you had 10 counters to this card, and which makes it a 12/12. Now, it also says whenever you cast a zombie spell, which obviously if you're having a zombie deck, you're going to cast a zombie spell. You put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield, tapped. Now, tapped means it comes into play, it has summoning sickness, you can't play it. But on the next turn, you have a 2/2 zombie creature that you can attack with. And if you have the previous card mentioned, let's go back and see what that was. So you can see it. You have Cemetery Reaper, I'm sorry. And then Death Baron. Death Baron gives 1/1 and has Death Touch for other zombie creature control. So your token would come into play tapped with 3/3 and Death Touch. So nobody's going to want to mess with you. Now look at this. We have Gem Palm Polluter. Now it's a little pricey as far as mana cost goes. This is like a later gameplay. You have to pay 5 colorless mana and 1 black mana. Okay. You don't really want to play this card unless you're desperate, for 4/3. You really don't care about that. What you really care about is the cycling portion. You pay 2 black mana, you cycle it, which means discard this card from your hand, you put it in your graveyard, and then you draw another card. But when you cycle it, Gem Palm Polluter, you may have target player lose 1 life for each zombie in play. So let's say you have all them zombie tokens out. Okay? You have 10, maybe even 20 zombie tokens out. Or zombie creatures, period. You choose a player. When you cycle this card, you go, hey, you lose 20 life. Oh snaps, you're dead, you're out of the game. It's kind of cheeseballs, but awesome at the same time. Since it's not combat damage, they can't prevent it unless they have a counterspell. Counterspell is a card, or any card of the type that says prevent player from playing certain card. So, this right here, definitely a game changer. Now the next card, I don't know if you guys can see that as well as I can. Gravespawn Sovereign. Very pricey, 4 colorless mana, and 2 black mana. But, it says, you can tap 5 untapped zombies you control. Remember, you get all them tokens. You'd be able to tap easily 5 zombies. Put target creature card from a graveyard into play on your control. Now, keyword, from a graveyard into play under your control. A graveyard. Which means any graveyard that is on the table. You're playing with 3 people, 5 people, 10 people. You can search all their graveyards and choose one person, one player, one card in the graveyard, and put it under play under your control. You don't have to worry about the color of the mana that's on the card. The casting cost, nothing. You just pull it from their graveyard and put it onto your playing field. That's great, because if you somehow stop them from pulling out a big game creature that's like a 20/20 or something like that, and it's in their graveyard, you can grab that card and put it on the in the playing field under your control. And obviously it has summoning sickness, but on the next turn you'd be able to use it. It does not state that it leaves play once you're done with it. So therefore, you just got a free creature. A free badass creature, depending on what's in the graveyards. You can get something simple. There may not be anything in the graveyard. It's kind of like a late game kind of card, obviously because of the mana cost. Excuse me. Now on to Grey Merchant of Asphodel. Hope I said it right. Asphodel, yep, that's how you say it. Comes into play for 3 colorless, 2 black mana. It says, when Grey Merchant of Asphodel enters the battlefield, each opponent loses X life, where X is your devotion to black. You gain life equal to life lost this way. Alright, so, devotion is this. This card here has 2 swamp symbols at the top for the mana cost. Let's say you have 4 other cards out on the field, they all have 1 each. Okay, so that's 4 of these, plus these 4, 5, 6. That's 6 devotion. Okay, so X would be 6. Each opponent loses 6 life, and you would gain 6 life because of your devotion. Now that is a good card. Something to think about in the zombie deck as well. Now, the next card on the list, Liliana's Reaver, comes into play for 2 colorless mana and 2 black mana, also known as swamps. It has Death Touch. Death Touch is any amount of damage this deals to a creature is enough to destroy it. If that person, like I said, has a 10,000, and you have a 1/1 with Death Touch, you can block that 10,000 with that 1/1 Death Touch. Both creatures die. Awesome. Alright, it says when he deals combat damage to a player, to the player itself, which means not the creatures, when it deals damage to the player, that player discards a card. They put a card from their hand into the graveyard, and you put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield tapped. This is something to think about. It's a little neat card. It's not a must in the deck, but it's pretty cool. It's a 4/3 for 4 solid card with Death Touch and this little ability here. So I'd recommend it. May not be your forte, but that's what I suggest. One of these cards maybe. The next card is Lord of the Undead. Pretty sure everybody knows Lord of the Undead, but if you don't, it comes into play for 1 colorless mana and 2 black mana. It gives other zombies a +1/+1. So it doesn't give itself a +1/+1, but it gives all your other zombies a +1/+1. The only downside to that is it says other zombies, which means if your opponents are playing zombies, they also get a 1/1. But most of the time you're not playing people with zombie decks. You're usually not playing the same decks. But if it happens, they get a +1/+1. No big deal, you get it too. Alright. It has pay 1 colorless and 1 black mana. Tap it. Return target zombie card from your graveyard to your hand. Somebody puts something in the graveyard that you want. Or let's just say Gem Palm Polluter. You want to do Gem Palm Polluter again? You return that card to your hand and you can do it again. Remember what Gem Palm Polluter does? Let's go back. If you put that card back in your hand, you cycle it. For each zombie in play, target player loses 1 life. That's a good combo. I like that. Something to think about. Look at this artwork. This is pretty cool. I'm going to butcher this name. Machias, I think. Machias the Unhallowed. Now, all the cards don't look like this, but I chose this one. It's easy to read. You know, good to look at. I like it. It is a legendary creature. Okay, legendary means you can only have 1 out on the field at the same time. For example, you have this card out in play. You go to play the exact same card. The rules goes as follows: once that same card, legendary, enters the battlefield, both creatures die and go into the graveyard. That's also true for if your opponent plays the same card. That's crazy, but something to think about. Still, wouldn't keep me from playing legendary creatures. Alright, it has Intimidate. That's pretty good. You have, whenever a human deals damage to you, destroy it. Other non-human creatures you control get +1/+1 and have Undying. When a creature with Undying dies, if it had no 1/1 counters on it, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control with a +1/+1 counter on it. And forgive me, I forgot exactly what Intimidate does. So we're going to look it up real quick. Alright. Might be the same thing as Fear. Alright. The rules on Intimidate goes as follows. Actually, I need to find it. Ah, it did replace Fear. Okay. So, in order for them to block, they have to have the same color, black. So if they have an all-white deck and you go to attack with Machias the Unhallowed, sorry, told you I was going to butcher it, that means they can't block it. They would take that damage, and that's pretty great. It also has Undying, which is great. Like I said, when a creature with Undying dies, if it has no 1/1 counters on it, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control with a 1/1 counter on it. Now that happens immediately. It just comes into play tapped with a 1/1 counter on it. So it would come back as a 6/6. So it's like, go ahead and kill my Machias the Unhallowed. God, I keep doing that. And you would get a 6/6. That's pretty nice. Alright. Look at this. Notice I don't know. LOL. That's pretty great. Alright, next card is Zombie Trailblazer. Comes into play for 3 black mana. And it says, tap and untap zombie you control. Target land becomes a swamp until end of turn. Now, I'll explain to you why that's great here in a second. Tap and untap zombie you control. Target creature gains Swamp Walk until end of turn. Now, Swamp Walk goes as follows. If your opponent has a swamp, which is the black mana here, if they have at least one of those on the field, they cannot block this creature. They are going to take this 2 damage. And if they have a Planeswalker, you say I direct it to your Planeswalker. Or they take 2 damage to their life total. The great thing about that is, tap and untap zombie you control. Remember, you're going to have all these tokens, or any zombie you have in play, target creature gains swamp walk to end of turn, and then that means target you tap and untap zombie you control. Target land becomes a swamp to end of turn. Target land. That does not mean your land. It means any land you see on the field. So this basically means you tap 2 creatures. Your biggest creature, if it's a 20/20, gets swamp walk. Okay, and then the other one you tapped, you choose a land of your opponent's. It turns it into a swamp. They can't block that 20/20, and that's pretty great. They're going to take it, and they're going to take it hard. Next card on the list, excuse me, Noxus Ghoul. Comes into play for 3 colorless mana and 2 black mana. It says, whenever Noxus Ghoul or another zombie comes into play, all non-zombie creatures get -1/-1 until end of turn. The reason this is great is creatures that have indestructible. If they have indestructible, it says they cannot be destroyed, but -1/-1 counters takes out indestructible. So if they have a 2/2 indestructible creature, you play, when this card's out, you play 2 additional zombies, or you play this one and another zombie. Boom! You choose where all creatures get -1/-1, so their indestructible would die. That's amazing. Something to think about to put in the deck too. Here's another one of my favorites, Skin Render. Comes into play for 2 colorless mana and 2 swamps. When Skin Render enters the battlefield, put 3 -1/-1 counters on target creature. Like I said before, if it's indestructible, it can be taken out of the game with -1/-1 counters. So, if they have a 3/3 indestructible, you play this card, enters the battlefield, you give it 3 -1/-1s, boom, that card's gone. Thank you, Skin Render. Good card. Something to think about as well. Here's Soulless One. Soulless One's really neat. Excuse me. Comes into play for 3 colorless mana and 1 swamp. It says, Soulless One's power and toughness are equal to the number of zombies on the battlefield plus the number of zombies cards in all graveyards. That's neat, because let's say you have 10 zombies in your graveyard. You get 10/10 for that, right? Let's say you have 10 zombie creatures on the battlefield. You get 10/10 for that. Let's say each of your opponent, let's say you have 2 opponents, they each have 5 apiece. You would get an additional 10/10. That's why this card right here is a huge heavy hitter. Something to definitely think about when playing a zombie deck. The next card, Steel Moon Cavalier. My last video and I said pause and you read it, but this time I got a big picture for you to read as I'm reading. Now, what's cool about this is, it comes in for 1 colorless mana into either white or 2 swamps. So 2 plains or 2 swamps. Your choice, whatever you got on the field. It has protection from white and from black. That's always good. White can't affect you, black can't affect it. You can pay 1 plains or 1 swamp. Steel Moon Cavalier gains flying until end turn, so you have a card that protects you from flying creatures. You could also pay another one. Excuse me, sorry. It's hard to breathe when I'm doing all this talking. Alright, so if you pay 1 plains and 1 swamp, either or, not both, either or, Steel Moon Cavalier gains first strike to turn. Now, the way first strike works, let's say they have a 2/1, and this is a 2/1, and they're blocking your Steel Moon Cavalier. You have first strike. Your 2 damage is going to strike first. It's going to hit that creature first. Therefore, they will die. You will not, because yours hits first. Alright. Now, for either 2 plains or 2 swamps, Steel Moon Cavalier gets +1/+0 to turn. Now, the great thing about that is, Just depends on how much mana you got. Let's say you got 6 swamps and you want to do this. You can give him 3. You can give him +3, +0. That's amazing. Something to think about as well. The next card on the list I wanted her to look at, what maybe you guys are thinking about putting in your deck. I definitely would think about putting this in. Stromgold Crusader. Ooh, I said it right first time. Bam! Awesome. We got 2 swamps. Comes into play. 2 swamps. Alright. It has protection from white. Always good. It has basically the same thing as the last card, the Steel Moon Cavalier, but it's only black. You pay 1 swamp, gains flying in its turn. You pay 2 swamps, he gets +1, +0 to end of turn. It's kind of like a smaller version of the Steel Moon Cavalier, but still great in my opinion. Alright, next card. We have Stronghold Assassin. Comes into play for 1 colorless and 2 swamps. It has tap him, sacrifice a creature. You have all them tokens. Who cares if you sacrifice a creature? Because it's just a token. And then you can destroy target non-black creature. This is great. This is really good. Let's say they got a green 2020. You sacrifice your 1/1 zombie token, or whatever power and toughness it is now, it doesn't matter. You sacrifice that, tap this card, boom! Target that creature's dead! Get out of here! No 2020 green creature coming to me today, buddy. No way. That's great, something to think about as well. We also have Unbreathing Horde. Okay, comes into play for 2 colorless mana and 1 swamp. It says, Unbreathing Horde enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each other zombie you control and each zombie card in your graveyard. You own 10 zombies on the field, you get 10/10 for that. You own 10 in your graveyard, you get 10/10 for that. Boom, 2020, amazing. Now look at this. If Unbreathing Horde would be dealt damage, prevent that damage and remove a 1/1 counter from it. So let's say you have a 2020 Unbreathing Horde. You go to attack, or they go to attack you, and they have a 10,000. Okay? You block with the Unbreathing Horde. Doesn't matter what Unbreathing Horde's power and toughness is. You block it, the damage gets prevented, and you remove a 1/1 counter from it. That is freaking amazing. Definitely something to think about when trying to build a zombie deck here, people. Definitely look into Unbreathing Horde, okay? Now, let's see here. We have Undead Warchief. Comes into play for 2 colorless mana and 2 swamps. It says, zombie spells you play cost 1 less to play. Now that's great because, for example, this has 2 colorless here. This has 1 colorless less. You want to play another Undead Warchief, or any card that has colorless, it would now cost 1 colorless less from the mana cost to play on the battlefield. Definitely something to think about. Not a necessity in the deck considering it's a 4 cost for 1/1, but it also gives zombie creatures you control a +2/+1. Something you can't pass up there, maybe. Just depends on your preference. The next card, Vengeful Dead, comes into play for 3 colorless mana and 1 swamp. It says, whenever Vengeful Dead or another zombie is put into the graveyard from play, each opponent loses 1 life. Guess what? You have nothing but zombies. And it doesn't say any specifications. Say you want to sacrifice a zombie to do a previously mentioned card's ability. Your opponent would lose a life, or each opponent would lose a life for the zombie you just sacrificed. Think about that, guys. It's another way to pop him in the face and say, haha, sucker, you just lost 1 life. Alright, the next one, Zombie Master. Comes into play, 1 colorless and 2 swamps. It says, all zombies gain, regenerate, you pay 1 black mana, regenerate this creature, and swamp walk. They're unblockable if defending player controls a swamp. All zombies gain regenerate and swamp walk. Remember when I previously mentioned if you have swamp walk and your opponent has a swamp, they can't block. So let's go back. Let's look at that combo here. Let's see here. Let's see if I can find it. Zombie Trailblazer. It says, tap and untap zombie you control. Target land becomes a swamp until end of turn. Now, all your creatures, all your zombies, would have the ability to swamp walk. And all you would have to do is tap at least one to give your opponent a swamp. Let's say, with the Zombie Master on the field, you had, again, 10 creatures, 10 zombie creatures on the battlefield. They now have all swamp walk, okay? You just turned your opponent's land, one of them, into a swamp. They can't block any of the 10 creatures you swing at them. Those sons of bitches are dead. And looks like that's all the cards that I was recommending that she might want to possibly put in her deck, or something you might want to put in your deck. But you know what? Look into these cards, see what you think. It's all about your preference, what you want to build. It's totally up to you. But again, guys, thanks for watching. Hope the video was good and informative for you. If you did, click the subscribe button, click the like button, comment, do what you do best. Thanks, guys.